Triton 9 is a world of crushing silence, but in the obsidian ravines the silence is a lie. This is a place where the sea floor isn't a flat plane, but a vertical labyrinth of jagged glass and tectonic cracks. Down here, at depths that would turn a standard submarine into a crumpled soda, can live the Trench-Stalkers. They are the nightmare architects of the ravine. They don't swim. Swimming is for the weak, for the prey that drifts in the currents. The stalkers possess 8 needle-like limbs, each 60 feet long and tipped with diamond-hard chitin. They skitter across the vertical walls and the ceilings of the trenches with a speed that defies fluid dynamics. To a stalker, the water isn't an obstacle, it's a lubricant. They can move at 80 knots across a rock face, closing a mile of distance before your sonar can even register a ping. The tragedy at Cable Station 0 was our awakening. The station was responsible for the main power line across the meridian. It wasn't sabotaged, it was harvested. The stalkers didn't just break the line, they used their spindly limbs to weave the heavy-duty cables into their nests. We found the station crew scattered like discarded husks across the ravine floor. They hadn't been eaten, they had been toyed with, run down by something that could move 10 times faster than they could swim. To the stalkers, we are slow, clumsy toddlers crawling in the dark. But the Federation doesn't crawl. We created the 51st Tactical Harpooners, the Harpoon-Hunters. We don't bother with sleek submersibles. A sub is a slow-moving target in a ravine. Instead, we wear the drag-class exosuits, massive heavy-framed suits built with ultra-dense plating and high-torque internal winches. We are the snipers of the abyss. Our primary weapon is the Apex Bolt, a wire-guided, explosive-tipped harpoon connected to a 300-meter carbon fiber tether. We don't chase the stalkers. We catch them, we anchor ourselves, and we reel the bastards in until they are close enough to meet our hydraulic pile drivers. We are the only things in the ocean that can stop a runaway freight train with a single shot. I am Commander Lead Silas. My winch is currently holding at 10,000 tons of tension, and I'm about to go for a ride. The drop into the Whisper Gorge was a blind plunge. The silt was thick, a gray fog that swallowed our floodlights. My HUD was a chaotic mess of motion tracking pings. The stalkers were all around us, skittering across the walls of the gorge, their needle legs clicking against the obsidian rock. Anchors down. Find a purchase and wait for the lunge. I barked into the haptic comms. The perfluorocarbon in my lungs felt heavy and cold. Hunter 2 Jacks, anchored. I've got 3 signatures moving at 80 knots on the ceiling. They're circling Silas. They're testing our range. Hunter 3 Sarah, I have one. Coming in hot at 6 o'clock. I spun my suit, the heavy thrusters kicking up a cloud of debris. A Trench-Stalker, a skeletal horror 50 feet long, erupted from the shadows. It didn't swim, it practically sprinted across a jagged basalt spire, its 8 legs moving in a blur of terrifying precision. It was heading straight for Sarah. Bolt away. I raised my right arm and pulled the trigger. The apex bolt shot out with a pressurized thump, trailing a shimmering carbon fiber wire. The harpoon's guidance fins stabilized it in the high-pressure water. Clang. The tip buried itself deep in the stalker's primary thorax, the barbs deploying instantly. The stalker shrieked, a sound that was more of a vibration, a jarring screech that rattled my teeth. It didn't stop. It used its incredible momentum to continue its sprint, dragging me off my feet. Winch to auto-tension. Hold on. I was jerked through the water, my suit slamming into a quartz formation as the stalker dragged me across the ravine wall. This was the death drag. The creature was trying to use the jagged terrain to shred my suit, pulling me through narrow cracks and over razor-sharp obsidian. But the drag-class suit was built for this. I tucked my limbs, the ceramic plates sparking as they ground against the rock. Anchoring. I fired my hip-mounted anchor spikes. They slammed into the basalt wall, locking me in place. The carbon fiber wire snapped taut with a sound like a gunshot. The stalker was suddenly yanked to a halt, its legs scrabbling against the rock as it fought the 3,000 tons of tension my suit was holding. Reel him in, Sarah. Execute. Sarah was already moving. She closed the distance, her suit's thrusters at maximum. As the stalker struggled against my wire, she drove her spike driver, a 3-foot hydraulic piston, directly into the creature's central eye cluster. Boom crack. The piston fired with the force of a tank shell. The stalker's skeletal head disintegrated into a cloud of glowing blue ichor and shattered chitin. The long, needle legs went limp, the creature drifting slowly toward the bottom of the gorge. One down. We've got a dozen more coming from the lower vents. Jax yelled. The ravine erupted into a chaotic melee. The stalkers realized we weren't just prey, We were anchors. They stopped trying to outrun us and started trying to swarm. They dropped from the ceiling, their spindly legs aiming for the joints of our armor. I was surrounded by 3 of them. They moved with a jerky, stop-motion grace that made it impossible to track them with standard optics. I had to rely on the haptic feedback of my wire. I fired another bolt, pinning one to the wall, while using my left-hand piledriver to crush the leg of another that had latched onto my shoulder. The water was a blur of blue blood and black silt. We were reeling and killing. It was an industrial slaughter. Every time a stalker tried to use its speed, we fired a wire and turned its momentum into a trap. We were the only things in the abyss that could keep up with them, not because we were fast but because we were immovable. "The Stalker King is surfacing," Sarah signaled, her voice dropping to a whisper. From the deepest, darkest vent of the Whisper Gorge, a shadow rose that made the other stalkers look like insects. The king was a titan, 100 feet of armored obsidian and 16 legs that looked like harvester blades. It didn't skitter, it moved with a terrifying rhythmic grace, each step shattering the basalt floor. "Silas, that thing is too big for a single winch. It'll tear your suit apart," Jack shouted. "Then we use all 3. Triple tether. On my mark." I fired my first bolt. Sarah and Jax followed a split second later. 3 carbon fiber wires streaked through the water, all 3 slamming into the king's massive armored chest. The king shrieked, a vibration so powerful it shattered the nearby quartz pillars. It didn't try to run. It turned and charged us. Full winch. Drag him down. We engaged our internal motors to 100%. The sound was a screaming whine of straining gears and boiling hydraulic fluid. We were 3 anchors holding back a mountain. The king's 16 legs dug into the gorge floor, carving deep grooves in the rock as it fought us. We were being pulled toward it. My suit's integrity was failing. Warning, winch overload. Structural failure imminent. Don't let go. Hold the line. We were 20 feet from the monster's mandibles. I could see the rows of serrated teeth, the glowing red eyes filled with ancient malice. I pulled my secondary piledriver, the Grand Slam. It was a massive 6-foot piston designed for hull demolition. Now, we all triggered our piledrivers at once. The impact was a physical explosion in the water. 3 hydraulic pistons fired into the king's chest cavity with the force of a tactical strike. The king's obsidian armor shattered. The blue ichor didn't just spray, it erupted in a pressurized geyser that blinded my sensors. The Leviathan's 16 legs collapsed, its massive body falling onto the ravine floor with a weight that shook the entire gorge. The king was dead. The remaining stalkers, seeing their god dismantled by the metal men, didn't stick around. They skittered back into the vents, their clicking sounds fading into the deep, dark cracks of Triton 9. They had learned the most important lesson of the obsidian ravines. You can be the fastest thing in the ocean. You can move like a shadow. You can outrun the current. But you can't outrun a human being with a wire and a grudge. The Whisper Gorge went silent. The silt began to settle over the shattered remains of the Stalker King. I stood there, my winch smoking, my armor scarred and pitted, but I was still vertical. "Sarah. Jax. Sound off. I'm here. My winch is fused solid, but I'm here. Still standing. I think I'm gonna need a new arm, Silas. But the line is secure." I looked up at the high walls of the ravine. The stalkers were still there, watching from the dark, but they were staying in the shadows. They knew now that the floor belonged to us. Humanity has proven the ultimate truth of the abyssal conquest. You can have 8 legs or 16. You can move at 80 knots. You can hunt in the vertical dark. But we are the species that brought the anchor. We are the ones who reel in the nightmare. We are the Harpoon-Hunters. And we aren't going anywhere. The king is dead. The cables are secure. The ravines are ours. The mission is over. We're going back to the station. And someone, for the love of the stars, get me a gallon of hydraulic fluid. I'm running dry.